Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Distant Disney. I'm Danny Newman, and this other guy with me is, what's your name?
Brandon Anderson. How's it going?
Oh, hey, Brandon, I'm great. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. I'm excited to get this off the ground and running.
Exactly, yeah, something we've been talking about for a while. And so, a bit of backstory for the two of us. I, at least, or both of us, we are former Disney cast members. We went and did the Disney College program. That's where we met. 5 years ago now, we did that. And then we loved it so much because I'm a little bit of a dork. Loved it so much that we stayed. We went seasonal and kept going back to the parks to work year after year for a little bit. And neither of us do it anymore. But we both still absolutely love the parks. Did I get that right? Am I missing anything?
No, I mean, I think you've covered it. If you are just a little bit of a dork, I'm an even bigger dork. We were, not only major fans of everything from the college program, but like you said, went back and worked for years as seasonal cast members after that. And, life got in the way eventually, but it doesn't mean that our love for Disney or our passion for the parks has ever changed.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think that's what led us to the creation of this podcast, the Distant Disney podcast, because we are, as former cast members, we are a little more knowledgeable about the Disney parks than your average everyday person really has any right or reason to be. But so we know that, and we want to bring that and our expertise of inside knowledge, if you will. Not that, we were entry level people. It's not like we know the inner workings of Imagineering or anything. That would be nice. Boy, that would be nice. But that being said, we both have been in the tunnels underneath Magic Kingdom.
It's very true. We saw literally everything, including all the garbage bags down there, too.
Oh, yeah. Some certain tunnels. I mean, when I worked in Adventureland, oh, man, that particular tunnel. I guess I should explain. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably already know about these. But if you don't, Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World in Florida, for a multitude of reasons, was actually built 14 feet above ground level in order to create a basement level underneath that is exclusively for cast members or the employees of Disney World. And Walt Disney did this for a couple of reasons, but it's really to keep the show alive, and so you don't. All the business stuff that you don't really want to think about exists under there. And to non-Disney cast members, it's kind of this holy grail, this mecca, if you will, of locations to go in Disney World, is the utilidors, the tunnels underneath Magic Kingdom. And so I don't know about you, Brandon, but when I had my traditions class and they led us underneath Magic Kingdom to the tunnels for the first day, I was incredibly excited.
Yeah, I think, I never realized how expansive the tunnel system, how big it actually was underground, and, didn't really realize all of the inner workings of everything down there, didn't quite grasp just how much actually occurred underneath Magic Kingdom. But, such a brilliant idea that, Walt came up with back when he was designing the park to basically keep the magic alive for the guests. The whole idea behind it is if you enter the world of Tomorrowland and you are immersed in this world of space and of future and of basically everything that we imagine that would come, in the world of tomorrow, it wouldn't make sense for that same type of feel to be over in Frontierland, which was obviously a tribute to, the American Wild West and the old frontier in U.S. history. So it was kind of this notion of meshing those two stories together or mixing them didn't make sense. And it was really just incredible. I mean, it was probably, I think, one of the most exciting things because I don't know, maybe it was the moment when I saw the tunnels and the utilidors, but to me, that was when it clicked that, wow, I'm a Disney cast member and I'm actually doing this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I hear you're referencing a very specific story that we were told. And whether or not it's true, it's just kind of entered into the Disney urban legend thing, is that Walt Disney himself was walking in Disneyland where there is no hidden underground basement level. He was walking in Disneyland and he saw a cowboy dressed for his work in Frontierland walking through Tomorrowland to get to work, because in Disneyland, Disney cast member costuming is right behind Tomorrowland, so everybody has to fan out through there. And he just thought that theming was completely broken. You would never see a cowboy in Tomorrowland. And that, according to Disney urban legend, is what sparked the idea of this whole underground network underneath Magic Kingdom, where we can all, as cast members, wander around underground and get from place to place. I could walk from Pirates of the Caribbean in Adventureland all the way literally over to Space Mountain or that area in Tomorrowland without ever poking my head up into the real world above.
Yeah. And I do think that, we had this notion that maybe the utilidors, that maybe the tunnels were a little more glamorous than they actually were. You know,
Yeah.
there's not a whole lot that's put into them simply because obviously they're only visible to cast members, and they'll always be that way. But and Magic Kingdom is the only park that has that type of underground network. Of course, I think the idea was there at one point for the other parks to maybe have a similar type thing, but it never came to fruition that way.
Yeah, I know Epcot has a couple things underground Future World, a couple little tunnels, but nowhere near the vat. That is literally just for the custodians to get to their garbage dumps or something down there. I know a couple people who've been under there. I never made it under there myself, but yeah, Magic Kingdom, the tunnels, you're right, are not that glamorous. Except for one of my favorite pieces is that if you, I think there's a tour. It's called like the Keys of the Kingdom tour or something that you can buy in Magic Kingdom. This was like $200 plus park admission. So it's ridiculously expensive. If you buy it, your VIP tour guide will actually take you underground into the tunnels and you can actually see it. And that's pretty much the only way for a non-cast member to get down there. And so I remember that little loop that they did right around the central area underneath Main Street USA was very clean. It was beautiful. It smelled great. They had pins hanging on the wall. That was the best part of the tunnels. That's the only part that the public saw. The rest of it, just dumpsters and smelled like trash fires.
Yeah, I remember just having so many different experiences down there, and I think that was kind of our idea for creating this podcast and for going through it is just we each have stories and different stories. I mean, ones that Danny you've got that I've probably never even heard, and we've known each other for years now.
Yeah, and vice versa. I mean, I know you, Brandon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your work location, the college program, and what you did while you were there for
Yeah,
Disney?
so for those who are not familiar with the way the Disney College program works, when you apply, you basically decide or you apply to certain roles. So there's a variety of different roles that you could be placed into, whether it be attractions or quick service food and beverage or merchandise, or it could be hospitality. There's so many different lines of work, lines of business that you can be placed in. So for me, I was placed in attractions, and I just so happened to get into attractions at Disney's Hollywood Studios. And so when I first started the program, I was told that I would be in an area which was at that time called Backlands Attractions. For those who are current cast members or who maybe know about it right now, there is no Backlands Attractions anymore. That has been disassembled
That's right.
over
Both
the
of our
last couple
first
of years.
locations are no more.
Yeah, so the attraction is still there, but several of them actually that were in that area don't exist anymore. So at the time, Backlands Attractions was Toy Story Midway Mania, Lights, Motors, Action, the Extreme Stunt Show. We had Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, the play set. We had the backstage, the backlot tour, and we also took part of the Animation Courtyard, which was part of our area too. So that would be Voyage of the Little Mermaid, Walt Disney One Man's Dream, and then at the time Disney Junior Live on Stage, and so that was all considered to be a part of Backlands
Yeah.
attractions.
And
And
I
for
believe
me,
you
I
also
was
had, even if it wasn't attractions, part of Backlands itself was the whole Streets of America area, right?
well. That's true. Yeah. So it wasn't. The Streets of America was not in Backlands attractions, but that area was still considered to be
Right. Just
part of
because
the
there were no
Backlands.
attractions.
Right. So basically, I was at Toy Story Midway Mania, and it was a little daunting, I guess, at first because, everybody was like, oh, at the time, that was the craziest attraction on Disney property. And it was the single busiest attraction that, literally existed at the time, where
That's right. I
an
remember
average
that.
wait day was 2 to 3 hours minimum. And so it was a little intimidating, but it was an incredible experience. And I think to this day, Hollywood Studios, I'm a little bit partial to that park specifically because that was my location.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That park, your attraction in particular, was just insane back then, and it always kind of will be, I think. But I remember I did not work in attractions, but I worked very near to you. I worked in this little quick service restaurant called Studio Catering Company, which was just
Uh
a
huh.
hot and sweaty mess, and glorified McDonald's and all that. We'll get into that later. But I remember one day I showed up and I had been there working there for months, and I'd never ridden Toy Story Mania because the line was always so crazy. So I showed up one day about 30 minutes early for work. I went in and I got a fast pass. This is back before My Disney Experience Plus and all that. You had to go put your ticket in the fast pass machine. I went and got a fast pass. Fast pass was for about 8 o'clock that night. A full 12 or 10 hours later, went and worked and did my entire shift, and then went back out and rode the ride at the very end of the night. It was so hard to get on that ride back then.
And that was such a standard thing. We would, of course, start back then the fast pass distribution, which was just the paper tickets, and we would start it right at park opening, which would be at 9 o'clock in the morning. And on a normal day, the fast passes were out by 11 or 11:30, and we would be done. That would be it for the day. And so, I don't know how many
Yeah.
times I ever answered the question, is it really telling me to come back at 9 o'clock tonight? And every single time my answer was, yeah,
Yeah.
yes, it is. That's exactly when you come back.
There is, I know you can't see it out here, madam, but inside there's 3 hours worth of line going back and forth. It's a
Oh, yeah.
giant.
And how many times would, maybe somebody say to me, well, it looks like the fast pass line is longer than the actual line. And I said, well, it appears that way. And for people who have been to Disney even just one time, sometimes you're going to notice that the fast pass line appears a little bit longer, but I assure you, go stand in the standby line, and you will definitely realize that that's not the case.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, segueing into our topic for today, do you think with those sorts of wait times, does Toy Story Midway Mania then or now, do you consider it to be an e-ticket attraction?
Oh, Toy Story Mania, most definitely. So when we mention the term e-ticket attraction, I don't know that there's necessarily a correct definition for what is or what is not an e-ticket, but to me, it's basically the top attractions at each park. And sure, I would at least, right off the bat, be able to name three for all, for each theme park.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, a little bit of history for anybody. Again, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know this already. But if for some reason you don't, all the attractions in the Disney parks didn't used to be completely free like they are now. It used to be run much more like a carnival or like Coney Island. You pay your admission into the park itself, and you buy these ticket books that have X number of each tickets, A, B, C, and D originally, each letter representing a different kind of tier of attractions. A might be It's a Small World, or the really small dark ride, or I think A was even just like walk through attractions or something really small. And then eventually when they started building the mountain ranges, I think Matterhorn in Disneyland was the first time that they said, oh, we should add another tier of tickets for this. And that became the e-ticket. And then from then on, it's become, again, this thing in Disney Urban Legend of the top tier attractions in every park are referred to as the e-ticket attractions. Even though the ticket system has been gone for decades now, we still refer to Space Mountain, Splash Mountain, all these ones. They are the e-ticket attractions of the park.
Yeah, absolutely. So like we said, I would venture to say that you could probably name a minimum of three per theme park, although there's probably at this point more that would be classified as e-tickets. So I think our purpose for today, kind of the topic, was focusing on, maybe two specific e-ticket attractions that we both really are drawn to. And obviously for me, I'm a huge fan of literally just about every Disney attraction. So I think every single e-ticket attraction holds, some kind of special place in my heart. So asking to narrow it down to two was really tough at first, but I think there are some that, for me, just take the cake a little bit more. There's something more about them than the others.
Yeah, well, go ahead. Don't let me stop you. Why don't you tell me about your first choice for your top e-ticket attractions in all of Disney World?
Yeah, so you can kind of think back to, you have your original e-ticket attractions, which are, like you said, some of the mountains that you have in Magic Kingdom. So Space Mountain, Splash Mountain, and Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, obviously some of the most original attractions, to literally one of the newest attractions, which is Flights of Passage at Disney's Animal Kingdom, which is based on Avatar, which has only been open now for a little over a year in the land of Pandora at Animal Kingdom. So I think that definition of e-ticket can go either way. for me, I'll kind of, since I've already mentioned it, start with that one. I never thought I would have said this until most recently, but Flights of Passage at Disney's Animal Kingdom has taken the cake. It is literally, to me, one of the most incredible attractions on on the planet, and I think it's definitely probably the most incredible thing Disney has created so far.
I agree completely with you. It is. I've only ridden it once because that is much like Toy Story was several years ago. Now it is Flights of Passage is just impossible to get on. The lines are insane, and we went with some of our friends who are still current cast members, and they knew some people. We'll leave it at that. They knew some people. We were able to get on, but it is just the. I mean, there's so many different parts of that attraction to dig into. There's the story. There's the giant screen you're looking at. But I thought that one of the most impressive things was the actual ride mechanics of how they achieved all those simulations and the feelings. I mean, that is a
Yeah.
giant. That's a giant auditorium you're in, and they essentially move the entire seating structure that you're on.
Right. I think that was what to me was the most amazing thing is just how much you are immersed into that story and how real it actually feels. And for those who are listening, and forgive me, don't get too angry with me, but I'm not a big Avatar fan. I never have been. Did I like the movie? Yes, it was a good movie, but it wasn't anything that really stuck with me. So I was very hesitant at first going into Pandora. I knew it would be cool. It was a Disney themed land, and so I just knew that what Disney did, regardless of my feelings about the movie, would be incredible. But I didn't realize how just real it was, and going into Flights of Passage. So if you haven't been on it, basically the idea behind it is you are riding on the back of what's called a banshee, and you take a flight through Pandora, and you go and you sit down. And I mean, Danny, you mentioned it. It's the way that the ride is designed. You have tiers of seating, and they're basically you could almost describe it as they're stacked on top of one another. And I think it may be the only Disney attraction where you sit down and you actually are buckled in or strapped in from the back versus a lap bar in front of you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it really it feels like you're like bread on a shelf or something when that wall in front of you goes up
Yeah.
and you look at all the other shelves of people sitting around you.
And you just fly through these scenes from Pandora, which are incredibly realistic. Obviously, you have some 3D glasses on, but you go through, everything from forests to oceans to rivers to little islands, and you see all the different creatures and different uh, things that you would see in Pandora. And I think it's realistic from the very first start. You go through two different pre-shows, which if you are any kind of Disney fan, you know that Disney is famous for their pre-shows, which come in before so many attractions, where basically you go and kind of get an introductory look at to what you're about to do.
Yeah, it really
And
sets the
so with
stage for the story.
Right. So with Flights of Passage, you have one that basically kind of explains what a banshee is and why you're going to be riding on the back of it. But you have another one where you are matched to an avatar. And I don't know. I think from the initial point when you walk into the line, um, all the way to the end, it's the most realistic experience that Disney has created so far. And yes, the line for it is insanely long right now. And I've always, for my entire life, said, oh, nothing is worth waiting that long. But now I think Flights of Passage has maybe changed my mind on that statement a little
That's
bit.
definitely up there. Yeah, that is seriously a one of a kind attraction, and it definitely gives my current favorite attraction a run for its money. But I wanted to come back to something you just mentioned a second ago. What was your reaction when several years ago Disney announced that they were building an Avatar themed land? Because I don't know about you, but well, actually, no, like you did just say, Avatar was fine. It was great. It is somehow still the highest grossing movie in history, uh, right in front
Yeah,
of Titanic. So James Cameron, he's doing fine for himself. He's got the top two grossing movies of all times.
right.
And this Avatar movie, it really doesn't have any cultural significance. Nobody talks about it anymore. Nobody references it. I mean, I think we might be able to because of the impact that this has had in our lives now in Disney World, but most people I bet couldn't really name any of the characters from the movie, maybe. There's Jake Sully and Natiri, but anybody else? Can you remember anyone else from the movie?
I couldn't have done it. And when Disney first announced it, I think we knew that there were going to be some kind of expansions at Animal Kingdom. We had heard rumor after rumor after rumor about the long-term plans for Hollywood Studios.
Right.
And obviously, during our college program, or right at the very beginning of it, was when New Fantasyland opened at Magic Kingdom within just a couple of weeks before we started. So, we knew that there was some kind of expansion coming to Animal Kingdom. And obviously, in order to keep the theming of the park, we knew it would be related to some animals. And I think there was a lot of speculation of, what movie it might surround, or if it would surround, we already had dinosaurs
Right.
in Dinoland, so they couldn't really go that route. And when they first announced it, to be honest, I was a little bit just indifferent, I guess you would say, about it, because I was not very familiar with the movie. I didn't know a lot about it. I didn't know what kind of attractions you might see. And I quite frankly didn't think it would be my favorite thing. And
No, it seems like a weird choice off the bat because, yeah, as I just said, it's the highest grossing movie of all time, but it's not really at the forefront of anybody's minds. I will say that when they announced it, even when it was being rumored, all attractions aside, I didn't know what attractions they could pull out of this thing, but I was really excited to see some bioluminescence. I thought they could do a really cool job with that. And I still haven't seen it. I haven't been there at night. Have you?
yes, I was just there a couple of months ago in June, and I saw it at night, and it is incredible. It is, like I said, I think you might even agree with me here. Pandora by far is the most realistic land too, in the sense of, and that's hard
Oh,
to say because
absolutely.
it's literally a world of fantasy. You go into something like, I don't know, Frontierland, and a lot of that stuff really did exist out west. But obviously, Avatar, Pandora is this entirely made up world, this made up realm, and going in there, you feel like you have left Animal Kingdom and that you have gone into somewhere totally different. So walking in there, especially at night, the bioluminescence is so cool. And just, I think that the overall theming, you have the live music, the entertainers that play the drums near the entrance to
Hmm.
Pandora, and couple that with the attractions. I think just the natural like calls of the animals and stuff that you can hear through the audio too. It's all amazing. So, I think Disney really proved themselves in that, because I think a lot of people were skeptical and said, well, what do we expect out of Pandora? And of course, it's Disney, so your expectations are going to be so high. But I don't think anybody really predicted what they were going to put out.
Yeah, their Disney's immersive storytelling in this land in particular really takes it to the next level. I mean, even the fact that they changed the cast members' name tags. These people who work there are no longer Disney cast members. They work for uh, whatever company Disney has invented to be mining this land. I just don't care about the story of Avatar at all. I don't think anybody does. I can't even remember the name of this fictional company they've invented, but the immersive level that they've taken you to is insane. And I think that I mean, Disney has always done immersion really well. Immersive, it's not immersive theater, but immersive experiences. I think that now, in the last 6 or 7 years, immersive theater is a really hot button thing. I live in New York, and it's a hot topic here in New York. Because there's some new immersive show. Oh, it's a big deal, and this is, I think, Disney really stepping up to really take you out of that theme park experience. Even in New Fantasyland, Frontierland, anywhere in Epcot, you are very aware that you're in a theme park, no matter how well they theme it. You've got your park map, you've got your little popcorn carts off to the side, but there's nothing like that in this place. The Sotuli Canteen is incredible. It's like you're in an old war-torn hangar inside there, and the food is delicious, by the way, sidebar. Their
Yeah.
immersion in this land, and the videos and pictures online when I was watching it before I made it down to experience it, doesn't do it justice. It is absolutely mind blowing in there.
No, not at all. And I think it's something that, Animal Kingdom has always had such incredible theming. I mean, you look at the concept of animals, and it kind of wrote itself. They were able to really dive into it. But I think it was something that Animal Kingdom really needed too, because no matter what they did, no matter how they tried to differentiate it, there were still people, and there are still today people who feel like Animal Kingdom is a zoo. And I know as a cast member, I was asked that many times that, oh, is that the place that's a zoo? And I kept saying to people, well, you have animals, there are live animals like a zoo, but it is so much
Yeah.
more than that. And I think that Pandora just is as a whole really helped to continue to separate it from the
Right.
idea
Because
of
this
a
was
zoo.
really, Flights of Passage was really the only second big e-ticket attraction to come out of Animal Kingdom. We had Expedition Everest, which I'll be bringing up later, and Expedition Everest before that, and then a bunch of other really good attractions, but none of the big blockbuster attractions that Disney is known for. And so they're really, yeah, I could see. Animal Kingdom opened up in 1998 with no thrill rides at all, no e-ticket attractions, and so it definitely got that rap right from the beginning as, oh, the zoo theme park, the ones you can go see all the animals, the ones that closes at, it used to close at 6 p.m., 5 p.m. every night for the animals. And this is, I think, Disney's real effort into saying, hey, look, there is cool nighttime stuff to do here. This is a full theme park. It's not the half day theme park it used to be or even just a couple of years ago before this.
Yeah, I agree. So while we're on the topic of Animal Kingdom, you mentioned Expedition Everest, which
I
you
do.
want
That
to bring
is,
up as by far one of the coolest e-ticket
yeah. So
attractions
this is one of my
ever.
e-ticket attraction choices for a couple of reasons. First of all, I think it's one of the best roller coasters that Disney has built. Certainly one of the most intense ones. I can speak that too from a weird personal story I have on there. During my time as a cast member there, we were given some opportunity, which is less of an opportunity and more some production company who didn't want to pay for extras. It was an advertisement, a commercial for the whole state of Florida. It wasn't even just Disney World. It was, come look at Florida. We have a bunch of swamps, and then Disney World. Disney World's way better than these swamps. And they wanted to just get some footage of their feature family in front of Expedition Everest with Goofy, and they had that whole thing. It was cute and fine, but they needed to fill up Expedition Everest, but they needed to have everyone to sign their release forms to be in this commercial and everything. So they couldn't just do it with every regular day people. So we all got a notice that, hey, if you want to go do this thing. So I got up at like 7 in the morning or whatever and went out there to Expedition Everest and rode it over and over and over and over again. I rode it 8 times in a row, essentially without stopping, because all you had to do for safety was we got off on the exit, walked right over, and got right back on the exact same train in the entrance. And I rode it 8 times in a row before I'd eaten anything. And that, let me tell you, that was a very intense experience. You don't really think of it because it's a fun attraction, but those backward loops, those really get you. That's 3 G's of force on you when you do that. I looked it up. That's 3 G's of pressure sucking the blood out of your head when you're going through those backward helixes.
Yeah, I think that it's funny you say that because I feel like ever since Everest was built, it really has become like an icon that people recognize now as Disney. So many times it was just Cinderella Castle, and that was. But I really feel like people do recognize that Expedition Everest is there, and I think going back to a little bit of the story, I used to watch these videos where they would tell the backstory of how they created Expedition Everest and where the idea came about. And Disney actually sent a team of Imagineers out to
Yeah.
Nepal and to other countries out in Asia to really investigate not just the story behind the Yeti and the urban legends that existed out in these countries, but to really look at how these countries, what their landscape was like, what their people were like, what the structures were like, so that they could create this little village almost as you come into Everest. That kind of ties all the way back to the theming thing we mentioned. But I think they did such a good job with how do we make this more than just
Right. So
a roller
piggyback off of what
coaster.
you said, that team that went out to these eastern countries, Mongolia and Nepal, as you said, was led by the incomparable Joe Rohde, who is now the executive vice president of Imagineering, known for his famous terrifying earring on his left ear. This man wears about 10 pounds of earrings hanging out. It's just dragged his whole ear down. And he's a creative genius. That ear used to terrify me as a kid when I was looking this guy up. It's horrible. But yeah, so when he and his team were originally designing the concept for this attraction, they knew they needed a roller coaster. They needed something. They needed some big crowd draw into Animal Kingdom because it was just a lush green paradise and there was nothing really exciting in there. So they an early concept was actually to create a dragon themed roller coaster because Beastly Kingdom, the legendary area of Animal Kingdom that was never built. And if you look on Disney's Animal Kingdom logo, you can still see the dragon on that logo in reference to the Beastly Kingdom. They originally wanted to build a dragon themed coaster, and that would be their foray into the Beastly themed kingdom. They actually constructed 24 different models for this roller coaster during the design phase before they eventually settled. And it was actually Michael Eisner who convinced the team to make it Everest, an Everest themed coaster. Joe Rohde didn't want to do Everest. He thought it was too site specific or too commercial. Everyone knows Everest. It's a thing. It's a commercial entity. There's Michael Eisner who put his hand down and really made that decision. And boy, am I glad that he did. What an incredible story we got out of that.
Oh yeah, and I think that you look back on some of the struggles that Expedition Everest had. So obviously it went through so many designs, but let's talk about the Yeti for a minute. And
yeah, the legendary, the infamous Yeti.
The infamous Yeti that has been inside this roller coaster now for years, but to this day has still never fully had the functionality that they had hoped for. And I think it was just the one of the most difficult things they had ever tried to do. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I still believe that it is the largest animatronic that Disney has ever designed.
I think something topped it. I can't remember right now, but at the time, it definitely was the largest, most powerful animatronic Disney had ever built. And so when Expedition Everest opened in 2006, just in time for their Earth Day, then the birthday of Animal Kingdom, it only functioned for about 16 months. This Yeti, it broke in 2008, just a little bit later. And I just so happened to visit Animal Kingdom within those 16 months in 2007. And did you ever get to see this Yeti in full action? It was terrified.
I did not, actually. So I was at Disney in 2006, 1 month before Everest ever opened. So I never got a chance to see the Yeti in her full form.
So close and yet so far.
And the Yeti is a female.
There you go.
So everybody
knows. Does she have
knows.
a name? I don't know this. Does Yeti have a name?
I feel like her name was Sue, but I might be wrong. No, Sue is. I don't know. Sue rings a bell, but she does have a name, and I'm going to look that up right now as you keep talking.
Okay, keep looking up. I know it's not. It's Dino Sally. It's not. Is it Dino Sue? I know. Yeah, there is a Sue somewhere in the theme park universe. But anyway, yeah, this Yeti was so massive and it lunged with so much pressure. I should have looked up the actual amount of PSI it took. I remember somewhere it took 3,000 PSI to make this thing of air pressure to make this thing move. And that might be way off. I might be wrong, but I remember reading that way back when. But
it was
a lot. And I remember it took 30 seconds for this thing to recharge. And essentially the movement that it had, when it was hanging on to the rock inside, the rock in some old wooden scaffolding that fit into their story, which we'll talk about in a second, inside this cave in Everest. And you go rushing by really, really fast. And it's kind of like waving its arm and its whole body. And then just at the last second, it falls down. It dives down and tries to grab the train as you go by. And that was the big scare. I mean, that thing, it seemed like it got really close to you. It felt like if you had wanted to, you could have reached up and grabbed its finger. But why would you? Because that was a terrifying monster coming down to attack you. And it was a beautiful animatronic. But so the story goes that in 2008, it was so powerful and so heavy that it began to actually tear the structural foundation of the mountain apart. Not the track. The track is still completely safe and the track was built completely separate from the mountain, but it began to literally tear the mountain apart by the seams, and they've turned it off and it hasn't moved in 10 years now, since 2008. 10 years has just been this gorgeous statue, a relic of an animatronic that is no longer animated.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and I don't know that they'll ever try to go back in and recreate that. I think because the attraction still holds so much popularity, even though the Yeti does not move. I have become unsuccessful in finding the name of the Yeti. However, apparently the Yeti was given a nickname called Disco Yeti due to strobe effects that happened in
Oh,
the beginning. I still feel like she had a name, but I don't. I can't find that at the
could
moment.
be. That's something I had never heard of, but it could be. But yeah, well, the rumor always was that Joe Rody, because Animal Kingdom is his baby. So when you talk about the expansion of Animal Kingdom, you're kind of talking about Joe Rody, and he's gonna be the guy behind it. But so the rumor always was that Animal Kingdom and Joe just needed another thrill ride attraction to be put in there, so they could close it down and really repair this animatronic. Which now that we've got the other thrill ride, your ticket attraction, the Flights of Passage, the rumor websites are just flush with these rumors and hopes that maybe now it's coming. We could do a refurb on Expedition Everest and get that Yeti back up and running. And boy, I would love it if that would
It's
happen.
it's possible. I mean, I think that they would automatically attract so many more people if the Yeti was fully functioning. So I think that like you said, they have another major attraction or several attractions open at Animal Kingdom. So at this point, Animal Kingdom is, of course, no Disney park is ever complete, but Animal Kingdom is pretty full at this point, and so I kind of want to not to go out of Animal Kingdom, but I'm going to kind of go towards my second e-ticket attraction, which most recently got a revamp a couple of years ago now. It's been about 2 or 3 years, I guess. But Soarin', and I know that a lot of folks are going to say, like, Soarin' is the same thing as Flights of Passage, or they're too similar. So I was reading that a lot of people compare Flights of Passage to a mix of Soarin' and Star Tours, and now that I think about it, that definitely makes sense.
Oh, it
But
does. Yeah.
Soarin' at Epcot is also one of my favorite attractions. I love it even more now that it has been revamped to Soarin' Over the World, but
Yep.
it was originally Soarin' Over California, and it has been at Epcot for a long time. And it was originally designed like if you ever played with what they called an erector set as a kid, which was I didn't play with them too much. I dabbled more in like Kinects and Legos, but it's a little metal toys that you could create moving components with. So
Yeah, I think I
that
built
is
like
where
a
the original
lawnmower
idea.
out of them once or something with actual spinning blades.
Yeah.
It's yeah, but it is.
So they created Soren out of it, and it to this day has been such an incredible ride.
Yes. To be clear, I just want to be clear. They didn't build the ride out of erector sets. It's based. It was originally designed with those.
That is
Yeah.
true. Although if they could have done it with an erector set, that would have been pretty spectacular as
That would,
well.
man, what a story that they would have had to tell. Michael Eisner would have lost his mind over that. But yeah, this is you're right. The revamp that they did a couple years back was really incredible, especially because the big finale of Soarin' Over California was you would go riding over Disneyland at Christmas for some reason. I don't know why they couldn't
Mm.
when they filmed it. The big joke was, well, why didn't they just wait 2 months to film it? You just need a nighttime shot of this thing going over Disneyland so that you film any parade. But now, 12 months out of the year, in both Disneyland and Disney World Epcot in Florida, you're looking at Christmas in Disneyland, and it really always took you out. It just took me right out of the ride. Oh, that's right. It's a pre-recorded movie. We're not actually soaring over Disneyland. Okay, well that was fun. On to Mission Space.
Yeah, well, ever since they've created it into Soarin' Over the World, it now takes you at the end versus Disneyland, but now over Epcot during Illuminations, Reflections of Earth. And I think that Soarin' really what it captures is the fact that you know so many people out there are travel junkies. I like to travel. I like to see new places, but you know, I have not been able to do that much. And I think that in addition to what Epcot, does in general with World Showcase, gives you this little opportunity to experience other parts of the world and experience things that you probably would never do. I mean, who imagines getting on a hang glider and going over mountains and deserts and oceans and literally going so close to the river that your feet are almost in the water. And then I mean you couple it with the realistic experiences of the smell of the orange trees that you used to have with the California edition of the ride, and then you have the water that you can literally smell the freshness of the
Right.
forests. I think it's amazing.
I think it's, as you just mentioned, it's a great use of four technology, which is kind of a theme parks term that's been coined to. There's been 3D in parks for years now, where the images pop out of the screen because you're wearing these glasses and science is magic and so on and so forth. But 4D is when there's actual physical elements that are incorporated, whether it's the smell of the orange groves, like you mentioned, or getting splashed by the river, or my favorite in It's Tough to Be a Bug in Animal Kingdom when the little pincers come out of the chairs and poke you. And this really is a great incorporation of that into this attraction.
Yeah. I think one of the tougher things about Soarin' is Soarin' has never really had the greatest queue lines. So we talk about
No.
queue lines, and I know that there are people out there who really don't pay that much attention to the lines, but I think the line is where you tell the story. And with Expedition Everest, you have an amazing queue line. With Flights of Passage, you have an incredible queue line. You look at something like Soarin', and it really was not very well done to begin with. You get this sense that you're going down into perhaps an airport feel. You are separated into different concourses, and you're separated into different terminals and things. And for me, I always loved going to the airport as a kid, but I wouldn't say that the airport is always the most fun experience for
No.
everyone. So I think the theming of that queue line, it needs, to this day, still needs something more.
It still needs something. I think the best part of that queue line is, as opposed to Expedition Everest, which does have an amazing queue line through this South Asian village, and there's temples and worshipping idols is the word I'm looking for, to the Yeti, and it's so detailed, versus the Soarin' attraction, which the best part of that queue line is that it's all indoors and air conditioned. Other than that, there's not really much going on.
That's true. And I mean, anybody who has spent a day at a Disney park is always going to be into a line that is fully air conditioned. But
Oh,
you go
absolutely.
into the land pavilion, and you go down either an elevator or an escalator, and you go past the Seasons food court, and you just feel like you're in this almost like a glorified shopping mall. And then all of a sudden, there's the entrance to Soarin', just kind of out of the middle of nowhere. So I think that the queue area, the storytelling in the very beginning leaves a little more to be desired, but I think it really does make up for it when you get in there and see the different scenes that make our world so incredible. I think that in itself makes up for the
Right.
rest.
And you know what? They also have a quality pre-show. It's definitely one of the smaller, less in-your-face ones, but just those little videos of Patrick Warburton. It's still Patrick Warburton, right? After the revamp, yeah.
Yes.
Those little videos of Patrick Warburton taking you through all the pre-flight safety checks and everything, and making that guy take off his, and especially these little guys.
His
that
little
line.
beauties.
Yeah, these little beauties. That's what it is. These little beauties. That's you
Yeah.
always get a good chuckle out of that, because Patrick Warburton's the last person you expect to see there, and I love it. It's great.
I agree, and I think that Soarin' will definitely hold its own as an e-ticket attraction at Epcot, because it goes back to the entire idea, the entire reason that Epcot exists is to educate, to keep people informed, but also just to give people an experience of all these wonderful places throughout the world that, like I said earlier, you probably will not have a chance to experience all of them
Right.
in your lifetime.
Absolutely.
It's almost impossible.
Nope, you're right. And so, no segue here. Let's just move on to the next attraction. So my final attraction that I've chosen for this e-ticket attraction roundup, this lineup, is one of the most classic attractions in all of the Disney locations across the globe, in my opinion anyway. In Magic Kingdom, in Frontierland, or Critter Country if you're in Disneyland, it is Splash Mountain.
Wonderful attraction.
A wonderful attraction. So, Splash Mountain is based on a movie that nobody has seen, which is fine. Unlike so many other Disney IPs or attractions in the parks based on, you got Little Mermaid, you got that's the only. Oh, Finding Nemo. You got a bunch of these attractions that are based on these popular movies, and Splash Mountain is based on the movie Song of the South, a 1940s release, combining the live action and animated technology that Disney was so famous for at the time. That Disney, pretty much right after they released it, really dug their heels and went, oh, nope, can't release that, can't do it, because it really, I haven't seen it, but from what I've read about it, just really insensitively portrays Black people and Black culture in in the South of the United States of America, particularly
Yeah.
stemming from a problem that it never really makes clear if these people that Uncle Remus and his friends and family that you're watching, never really makes clear that this is a post Civil War America. So it could be confused that you're looking at all these African Americans having a great time and telling stories while they're slaves, which is not a good image at all, because that was very much not the case, obviously, during one of the worst periods of American history. And so it got a lot of flack for that. And after a small theatrical release, it was never released on home video, and still to this day has never been released.
Has never been released. I have done research before, and there are ways out there to get copies of it through these maybe not so trustworthy websites or eBay,
Yeah.
or there are ways to get your hands on the film, but I don't know that I even ever want to see it, as big of a Disney fan as I am, because of some of the ideals that obviously we know were portrayed in it that were not appropriate for that time period, but for any time period. They're just inappropriate to begin with. So I think, seeing that there was an attraction based off of that movie has always been so interesting. And the characters, specifically Brer Bear, Brer Rabbit, and Brer Fox, are recognizable Disney characters, but I think there's a lot of people out there who have no idea where they came
Right, that
from.
they are from a movie, that the attraction didn't come first. The movie came first. And it's so interesting. So the backstory on that is that Tony Baxter, legendary Disney Imagineer, he created Splash Mountain, and he created Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, and he's still kicking it and still just having a great time. The Disney company. They were looking. This is a Disneyland first attraction. Splash Mountain came out over there first. They were looking for something to kind of fill in the gap, and I think it was called Bear Country over there at the time, and now it's called Critter Country. I don't know, but Disneyland is not my expertise. But so they're looking for something to fill in over there. They're also looking for something to do with over in Tomorrowland, this show called America Sings, which featured about 100 or so singing animals. I don't know what this attraction was, but nobody was going to it. Whatever it was dying. It was a dying attraction. And they wanted a way to rescue all of these. Disney recycles a lot of their animatronics, their moving robots a lot. And so they wanted a way to rescue all of these singing little creatures. And Tony Baxter in his car one day made the connection between this movie that had been released about 40 years prior that he just knew about, and these little attractions. Thought, oh, we could redress all these little animals to be the characters from. So in Song of the South, Uncle Remus is telling these folk tales, which is where we get all the Brer Fox and Brer, all those characters from. He thought we could redress all these characters to be these characters from the folk tales that Uncle Remus is telling about. Forget about the entire rest of the movie. Leave all the humans out. We don't want to do anything about that. But let's just tell these folk tales again and create it in a log flume environment, which that was not Tony Baxter's idea. That was, again, our good friend Michael Eisner, who was very new to the company at the time, and he was looking to cement his legacy, really secure his job, I guess. And he said, hey, we should create, a log flume attraction. Every single other theme park has an attraction, and it's hot in these California summers. Let's create a water ride. Imagineers said, well, no, that's exactly why we don't want to create a water ride. Every other theme park has a water ride. So they went back and forth until finally, Michael Eisner, being the CEO, he won. And they created these concepts. It was originally going to be called Zippity River Run. What a mouthful that is. Zippity River Run. And they pitched both this and Star Tours, interestingly enough. They pitched this and Star Tours in the exact same meeting to Michael Eisner. And Michael Eisner brought his 14-year-old son to the meeting because he's a member of the target demographic. Let's see what this kid thinks of this stuff. Brought him to the meeting. Kid loved both attractions, and they were greenlit. And 3 years later, on July 17th, 1989, Disneyland's 34th birthday, we got the original Splash Mountain in Disneyland in California. And then exactly 3 years after that, on July 17th, 1992, we got the Splash Mountain in Walt Disney World in Florida.
I think that Splash Mountain might be one of the most characteristic attractions. It very well could be the number one most recognized attraction in any Disney park. And I think it is interesting to hear the stories of Michael Eisner wanting a log flume, saying, well, every other park has this type of attraction. And a lot of people saying, well, we don't want to be the same. And I think Disney really did, a great job with it. One of the things that makes Splash Mountain so unique is in most log flume rides, you go up one hill and you go over the top, and then you go down the main hill.
Right.
Well, what Splash Mountain does is it tricks you, I want to say at least six different times, into thinking, well, hey, here we are, we're going up this bigger hill and we're approaching the top. And you start to look over, you start to peer over, and you realize, oh, this is
This
a
isn't it.
smaller drop. And I think that just continually it builds up suspense. And I think that was one of their bigger goals is you never really knew when you were going to get to that big
Yeah, and I
drop.
had forgotten about that element because I'd been riding Splash Mountain since I was a kid, so I knew about all these tricks and I knew about the big main drop, and it's kind of kind of obvious once you've ridden it a couple times. But I went recently with my girlfriend who had never been to the theme parks, and it got her every single time, every single drop we went down. She was going, "Oh wait, is this it? Is this it?" And no, 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 this isn't it. But that's such a great element of just a little bit of Disney isn't afraid to kind of point and laugh at their guests every now and again. I think that's such a great element of that.
Exactly. And so between, that little pointing and laughing, that teasing, and then the story that went behind it, Disney really did a great job taking that attraction and differentiating it from any other log flume out there. And now I think it would almost be safe to say that many theme parks have actually modeled their log flume after Splash Mountain.
Oh,
They've kind
absolutely.
of taken that
It's
idea.
the new industry standard. Although I don't think any have come close to. So within Splash Mountain, there are 103 audio animatronics moving around, singing and dancing, which is a staggering number of robots in a water ride. That doesn't. It just blows my mind how many they fit in there, and that I wonder how many of them ever get splashed by people or just break down and short out. Some of them are pretty close to the water.
I would imagine it happens a lot more than we think.
Yeah, yeah, that's something I know. For a while there, at the near the very end, there's a little bird or something sitting on Brer Rabbit's mailbox, and that guy didn't work for years. I remember he was kind of moving his head around, but he was singing and his beak didn't move, and they finally repaired that lately. So I guess they do break down a lot. But this one, we were talking about lines and cues earlier. This attraction is not really strong on its cue game. Doesn't really have a great line outside. It just kind of winds
Not
back and forth,
quite.
doesn't it?
It's poor in the sense that most of it is outdoors,
Yeah.
and when you get to the indoor portion, you are inside a little cave, and so it's very narrow and very dark. And no, not exactly. And one of the things that I know made it difficult, and still to this day makes it difficult for cast members, is Splash Mountain is one of the few attractions where there's no separation between the fast pass queue and the standby queue. So typically the way that they're designed now is they're going to go off in different
Right. You
directions
have
so
different
that
cue
people in
experiences.
each line don't have to see each other, so that the standby queue doesn't really know how quickly that fast pass line is moving.
Right.
Whereas with Splash Mountain, there's no difference. They both meet at the end of the little cave at what we call the merge point. So no, it's not as strong on its line as it could be. And its
Yeah.
neighboring attraction, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, recently went under a revamp specifically for the queue line. So I wonder if Disney would ever do that for Splash Mountain.
I would certainly like to see it. I mean, I think especially in Florida, I can't speak to the California attraction, but in Florida, any queue that is outside is a mistake. Nobody wants to spend hours standing around. I don't care if you're under shade. I don't care if there are fans blowing at you. Nobody wants to spend hours standing around outside any more than they have to do. And I think, and they keep building attractions like this. They keep putting these queues outside. I haven't been there yet, but I'm watching the videos of these new attractions in Toy Story Land, and the Slinky Dog coaster line is all outside. And
Yeah.
I've seen tweets and people going, "Hey, have you ever been to Florida? It sucks during the summer. It's really hot. It's really humid. It's always storming. That is such a perfect time. Even if the attraction isn't outside, just build a little show building, build a little air conditioning for people to line up through. That's all you need." So I would love to see that for this Splash Mountain queue. I think you could really easily just cover that little area there where the queue literally just winds back and forth. That's all it is. And there's like a character meet and greet nearby in the train station, and that's it. And I think you could just kind of extend that cave or build that. You have the little section we're in, kind of a almost a country general store. I think you could take either of those themes and expand that over that winding queue, put some air conditioning in there, and everyone will be a lot happier.
I agree. I very much agree. And, maybe the idea behind it is you're about to go on a water ride, so you're eventually going to cool down. But as much as you would think, you will get on Splash Mountain, and there are times when you will get off and you are not very wet. And I think some people seem to think that you will get soaked every time. And there are places on that ride, on that attraction, where yes, you will very much get soaked. But there are also times when you will come off and realize you didn't even go on a water ride.
Yeah, no, it's totally possible to dodge that water. They also, I do appreciate in the winter when it is really cold in Florida, really cold, quote unquote, they do turn the splashes down so you don't get as soaking wet. But do you have a strategy for this when you ride a Splash Mountain? Do you have a certain spot in the log flume you like to sit to avoid getting wet or to get the most to it, whichever you
So
prefer?
I feel like the secret would always be to go to the inside. So if you're looking in the log flume, you would be on the left, because at the very end, after you go through the main drop, you get to the point where the logs tend to back up, and there is a section where there's a waterfall on the right side. And every time a log comes down the hill, which I believe is every 12 seconds, it splashes
Sounds about
all
right.
on that right
Could
side.
be.
So if you get stuck there, then you are going to get more wet there than you did on the initial
That's a
drop.
great point.
So I would say definitely go. Let your friends sit on the outside. You go all the way in. That way you can avoid that big splash
That
there.
you're right. That particular spot with that waterfall is such a weird little area because you are getting from the right, you're getting splashed by that waterfall. But then if you do get backed up and you're sitting there getting splashed, you also have the sun beating down on you, and you just had all of your sunscreen you put on washed off by this big splash at the end of the big drop on Splash Mountain. And it's just that little spot getting stuck there is so unpleasant, and it's happened to me so many times.
Yeah, it is unpleasant, but again, on a hot Florida summer day, which is
Every
literally
day.
every day from February until November, it is definitely
Yeah.
worth it.
Yeah, you're not going to get as soaked as you do on Kali River Rapids or there's one actually,
Not
Islands
at
of
all.
Adventure that I rode recently, Bluto's Bildrat barges. That one just, you might as well go
Yes,
underwater on that one.
well, in fact, there's three big water rides at Universal Studios, between Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure, and all three of them you get soaked
Yeah,
on. So,
that's true.
of course, these these four e-ticket attractions that we mentioned are uh, certainly not every e-ticket attraction. I mean, I'm partial to so many of them. I'm a huge Toy Story Mania fan, obviously, a Tower of Terror guru. There are so many great attractions out there, but I think that, at least for me, I picked the two that always are, every time I'm in Disney, I say, there is no way I will miss those two
Oh yeah.
attractions.
There are so many now e-ticket attractions in Disney World, and these are just purely our subjective choices, and they're based. I mean, for me, Splash Mountain it was one of my favorite rides as a kid. I couldn't ride Tower of Terror as a kid, but I could ride Splash Mountain. It became one of my lifelong favorites, and I'm sure that everyone's favorite attractions. I mean, they vary person to person, obviously, but yours might not even be an e-ticket attraction. It could be Spaceship Earth and the Great Epcot Geodesic Sphere.
A wonderful attraction, whether it's e-ticket or not, one of the best
Oh,
things out there.
absolutely. Yeah, that the smell of fire in burning Rome is just wonderful. I love it.
Oh
It's
yeah.
great. All right. Well, I think this has been a great recap of our top four e-ticket attractions in Walt Disney World. And we still have so much more to cover on the future podcasts that we're going to do. There's just so much to talk about in Disney World. And I mean, even, we used to work at Disney World, but I'm not married to it all. I'm absolutely looking forward to talking about some of the things going on in Universal and Islands of Adventure. And those are really the only other
Absolutely.
parks that matter. SeaWorld, we don't need to talk about SeaWorld.
No, and to clarify, we were both cast members at Walt Disney World. I have never been to Disneyland, and Danny, you have not
Nope, that's
either. I don't
it's
believe.
a blot.
So
It's a mark of shame for me. I regret it.
it's a big goal,
Yep.
but forgive us for not mentioning that one as much. It's not that it's not as important or as relevant. It's just one that we are not as well
Nope.
versed in.
There's also just again, there's East versus West, and I listen to some of these West Coast podcasts talking about how better Disneyland is, and I'm sure it is the original, and it's wonderful. But the fact is, there is just more to do in Disney World on the East Coast. There's 4 parks, 27
Absolutely.
resorts, 2 water parks, Disney Springs. Now I was going to say downtown Disney, but Disney Springs. There's just so much story and adventure and fun to be had at Disney World.
Twice the size of Manhattan.
That's true. And Manhattan is, oh God, it's enormous. That's where I am now, and it's just a monster.
But imagine 2 of those.
God, no thanks, not at all. Not at least not with Disney's transportation is better. I'll give them that.
Very true.
Yep. Well, all right. Do you have anything going on that you want to plug or anything? I mean,
no, I think that probably covers it. Of course, we will keep going on a variety of topics, not just related to attractions, but the best food and the best resorts and rumors and anything else that is related to the Walt Disney World property. I'm sure at some point we will go for
absolutely,
covering.
we'll get there. And as this is the inaugural episode, we don't have any social media for this podcast yet. We'll get there. Stand by for that. This has been Distant Disney. Thanks so much for listening.
Have a good day.